Nduoko, let's talk about cancer.
Sure. So, around the world, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's given rise over the last couple of decades. Breast cancer being the number 2 cancer in the country in terms of prevalence, in terms of spread. And it has really taken the country by storm. In terms of the cases that we've seen, thousands of women and men, interestingly enough, having been affected by this particular cancer. It only comes second to cervical cancer in Kenya, and then other cancers follow. October was deemed as this month where very many people, very many women have to have either survived the cancer if having been found in advance of time, or then having to go through either single or double mastectomies, and then living with the disease, with the reoccurrence of such, and then going through treatment, whether that be radiation treatment or chemotherapy, or then, like we said, having to go through surgery for mastectomies. So it has been going on. The oncology arena in the country has improved in terms of the information that they've been able to use to treat a lot of patients in the country. And what we see is that there are quite a number of survivors in the country then who've been able to tell their story in terms of how treatment has worked for them, in terms of what government policies have been put in place to make sure that those who need the support are getting the support. However, issues of cost continue to come up. Issues of care, and for a lot of people who need hospice care, for a lot of people who don't even have the money or the wherewithal to get the kind of care that they need. So this morning, we're going to look at it again and look at how far we have come in the last year since what happened in October 2019, and the strides that have been made, those who've survived and how they've been able to survive it. We're going to speak to survivor Margaret Wanjiru today, and we're also going to speak to oncology nurse Benbella Onyino this morning to give us some insights into how that has progressed over the last year and what we're looking for in the coming years in terms of fighting this big one when it comes to cancer.
Indeed, let's bring them in. And Margaret and Benbella, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's good to have you both on the line, and welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with you, Benbella. Benbella, you are a trained oncology nurse at KNH. You've worked here for 13 years in the area of oncology. You've seen it all. Very many patients who come to you, and you have seen those that have been able to fight. You've seen those that have really suffered, and you've been able to, I'm sure this is something that has affected you. But let's look at the situation in the country so far and how it looks like. When you talk about fighting cancer, and especially breast cancer, the level of awareness, how much awareness is there on cancer in the country, in your own opinion?
Okay, thank you so much, Latif, for having me in the show and enlightening Kenyans on cancer, especially breast cancer, being also this month being a breast cancer month. I can say the level of enlightenment to the general public as per now, it has increased tremendously as compared to yesteryears because of the much knowledge that's right now in the medical field. One, I can say there are so many, at least nowadays, there are so many trained nurses in the field of oncology. There are so many oncologists on board also managing these conditions of cancer as compared to those years. I can say, as per now, we have over 100 trained oncology nurses in the country as compared to a few years ago, like 5 years ago, where we had less than 10 in the whole country. We have more than around 50 oncology doctors on board as compared to 5 years ago, where we had less than 5 in the country. So I can say it has really improved because with the more knowledge on cancer in the medical field, the higher the sensitivity, the higher the public is sensitized on cancer, even the other health professionals are sensitized on cancer.
Okay, well, Margaret, if we can go to you, looking at just giving us a bit of your story so we can understand how truly things have progressed medically. How was it for you when you found out that you had breast cancer, and what kind of support did you get medically, and how were you able to go through this?
Hello.
Yes, Margaret.
Me, I'm Margaret Borum. I'm from Kiambu. I first detected, I had a lump in 1993. I went to Kiambu District Hospital, where I was attended by a nurse, then referred to a doctor. The doctor told me I'll be done biopsy, which I didn't know what was biopsy, and he did an open biopsy. Then after that open biopsy, by then Kiambu could not do mastectomy, so they referred me to Kenyatta, and they gave me a lot of counseling, so I was ready for what they had told me. When I went to Kenyatta, Kenyatta has so many people, so I was booked on a long time, on so many months. And after that, the doctor said, no, you have to find another doctor. So I went to Nazareth Hospital, where I was done mastectomy and then done chemotherapy for 6 sessions. By then, when you were done chemo, you have to be inpatient for a week, then out for 3 weeks. Then when the chemotherapy is over, there was no radiotherapy. By then, I was not referred for radio.
In terms of cost, how was that for you in terms of the money that you had to spend going to the doctor every now and then? What was that experience like?
Well, it was like a miracle because the doctor who treated me, who did mastectomy, he had come with drugs of chemotherapy, and he was in Kenya for only 4 months. So by then there was medicine, and we were not paying. But for the bed, you had to pay 1,000. By then, 1,000 was a lot of money. I was not employed, but my family did their best and tried to help me with the money I needed. So the treatment was over. It's only when I went home, there was a lot of stigma, people waiting for you to die.
Yeah.
You are not dying. You can do some kibarua somewhere. So they used to see me as if, I don't know. So, but I was ready for that because I was given counseling by still the doctor who did my mastectomy.
Where you come from, had anybody else ever undergone the sort of procedures you had undergone, or had anybody else been known to have had the sort of cancer that you had?
So when I meet such people, I do give them counseling and my experience.
Yes.
Not to worry. And for those who don't have a lump, they keep on examining themselves before they go to the doctor. Because I have realized that you are the first doctor, you yourself, you have to do a self-examination. Then at least once a year you go to the nurse. You start with the nurse. Nurses are very helpful in our community because we are the ones who first see you. And they help us a lot because to confirm you have a lump, you go to the nurse and he tells you to go to a clinic officer. From a clinic officer, you go to a doctor.
And in the period when you first got diagnosed with the breast cancer, Margaret, this was in the 90s. I mean, it's about 27 years ago.
Yes.
Was there anybody else in your village who had ever had breast cancer, to your knowledge, to the best of your knowledge?
There are so many. But what they do, most of the ladies, when they feel a lump, they start taking herbal. They don't go to the doctor.
Yeah.
It's only a few who have succeeded. But I know there are some who are bedridden. They say, my breast will not be removed. I'll not go to the doctor. I'll rely on herbal. And those herbals, I mean, they are very stressful because they make the lump, I don't know, they make the lump grow quicker.
Yeah.
And when they go when they go to the hospital, the last minute, they are only given palliative care. Mm-hmm. And you know, palliative care in the rural areas is not so perfect. So they end up in pain, a lot of stigma. They have to stay in a room alone because of the smell. And it's very hectic, this.
Benbella, if we can come back to you now, I mean, asking the question, just listening to what Margaret has said, a lot of people who may have problems or would have found that they have a lump, for example, are staying with it at home for many things. Stigma, for thinking that they can treat themselves herbally, for thinking that the cost is too much for them to bear. How have such things been handled over time? We're looking at people who've dealt with cancer for the last 20 years, 25 years, and are not coming out. How have we been able to deal with these things, dealing with the stigma, dealing with the cost of care for cancer, and then also dealing with, you know, the medical approach, the herbal approach? How have we been able to deal with all of these things over time?
Okay. What I can say is not all lumps are cancerous. So we normally tell them that every growth that you find, or maybe you might discover that you have in your breast, it doesn't mean that it's cancerous. It can be benign. So the best thing is to come forth so that it can be done investigation, so that to ascertain, is it cancerous or not cancerous? Then from there we pick on. If it's not cancerous, it's removed and you are advised on the way forward. If it's cancerous, we also advise them on about, if depending with the stage we are in, the patient has come in, we advise them on the modes of treatment that we have. And we find in breast cancer, there are like 5 modalities of treatment. We have surgery, we have chemotherapy, we have radiotherapy, we have hormonal treatment, and we have the biotherapy. Whereby in surgery, if the lump or the mass is still very small or it's in early stages, the best mode of treatment for cancer is surgery. If it's very early, that's why we emphasize on self-breast examination, so that we may detect this tumor at a very early stage. And the best mode of treatment for them, if it's at very early stage, it's surgery. Either a lumpectomy, whereby you just remove only the lump, or a mastectomy. Then the other form is chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is whereby you use drugs and you infuse them via cannula into the vein of a patient to destroy the cancer cells in the body. Then we have radiotherapy, and radiotherapy we are using radiation to destroy the cancer cell in a localized area. Then you have the hormonal, depending with the immunohistochemistry that's being done on the biopsy to find out if the patient has the receptors of estrogen or progesterone. We put them on hormonal treatment to I can use the word to block the cancer cells from receiving the hormone estrogen and progesterone, which makes the tumor continue growing very fast. Then in biotherapy, it's just using drugs which have been modified to look or to resemble the body immunity, which resemble the cancer. Then the body will fight the cancer cells or the tumor cells. Then also the drug is also used to destroy cancer cells. So in all these forms of treatment, we sensitize our patients on the available drugs that they have locally and which have been proven scientifically, globally, to be very efficient in destroying cancer, especially in its early stages. So by so doing, we sensitize our patients that these are the treatments that we have in the country, locally, and they're very effective. If you discover the cancer at very early stage, you can control it or cure it almost 90%. That's one thing that you have done. By so doing, we have discouraged them from going to herbal treatment, which has not been proven to be effective in treating cancer. Then, but on the side of cost, I can say, for now, the cost has come down as compared to yesteryears. it has come down in that most insurances like NHIF, Britam, and the rest, at least they have come on board and they're now paying for cancer patients. And like before, they used to pay cash, and the cost, I know the drugs for cancer, they're still high. Yes, we know the cost is still very high, and we'd pray that there's something should be done or can be done so that the cost can come down.
Is there any way of preventing the acquisition of this disease? Is there something that an individual can do to ensure they don't get cancer?
I can say yes or no, because one, if we talk about cancer, it's the cost number one for cancer is still not known. But we have the predisposing factors or risk factors that have been strongly linked to cancer. So if these predisposing factors, if you zero into them one by one, for example, if this month is breast cancer month, so I can say, for example, if there is a family history of breast cancer, a first degree relative, a mother, a sister, a daughter who has breast cancer, if there is one in that family, we advise those siblings or children or mother to go for screening, early for prompt screening, so that we may detect this cancer at a very early stage, because there are very high chances of them developing cancer, especially if a client comes at a very young age and has bilateral breast cancer. Bilateral breast cancer, it means all the breasts are affected by cancer. I'll be doing justice to this family if I allow this lady to go home without inquiring the siblings, especially the lady side.
Yeah.
I should go, right now we have the word contact tracing in COVID. I can say even in cancer we can do contact tracing. If a lady comes with bilateral breast cancer and is still young, I'm supposed to do contact tracing to find out about the siblings, about the mother, the sister, where are they? Then we begin to do screening on them very early, because the risks are very high. If a lady has been diagnosed with breast cancer at a very early age again, I'm supposed to do even contact tracing. Let me use that word, contact tracing, to find out about the siblings, that the sisters, where they are, because the risks also are very high for them to develop breast cancer. By so doing, we can, you may ask the question, what do you go about it then? I remember there's a superstar in the US I think few years ago was done mastectomy, and it was in the social media.
Yep.
I know many Kenyans were wondering what was she doing. You find there's that screening for genes in developed countries. These are genes which have been strongly linked to breast cancer. So if maybe the patient comes to your health facility for the first time and has bilateral breast cancer, or the cancer is the lady is very young, in his 20s, or even in his teens. If you go ahead, I'm supposed to go ahead and maybe do mastectomy to this lady. By so doing, I'm reducing the risk of this lady developing breast cancer. That's what this superstar did.
Okay,
if
I can ask you a question there. If so, you've talked about contact tracing now. If you have a patient who has presented with breast cancer at a facility, right?
Yes.
Now you do a trace of their family.
Yes.
Are you saying that the first port of call is to do, or using the example that we've seen around the world, is to do a mastectomy, even without finding out whether we know that they're at high risk? So are you saying that the suggestion now is to go ahead and do something like a double mastectomy because of the risk that has presented itself?
Yes, there are several ways of doing it. There's mastectomy. Then also there's another one called use of hormonal treatment. There's a drug called tamoxifen and others, and like anastrozole, we normally prescribe for our clients so that they use for a certain duration of time, or even possible continuous. For doing so, this patient, the relatives that are we now categorize them as a very high risk of developing breast cancer.
So what you're saying is that before the opportunity for development of cancer presents itself, you want to start treating against it or eliminating the possibility of cancer completely. Which one are
eliminating
you going for here?
You're going for elimination, the chance of this lady or the siblings developing breast cancer. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you're dealing with something which is hereditary.
Exactly.
Now,
it has also been strongly linked with genetic or hereditary.
Okay, now, is it possible for men to have breast cancer?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
It's very much possible, but it's at a really low rate as compared to women. But men also do get breast cancer. In my field of practice, I've come across like around 5 men who have breast cancer.
There's about 5 men in what, in 13 years?
Yeah, in that duration, 13 years of my experience in oncology.
Joining us on the line this morning is Margaret Wanjiru. Margaret is a breast cancer survivor, and she is a breast cancer campaigner. She co-founded the Kiambu Cancer Group. 61-year-old mother and grandmother had breast cancer in 1993, went through it and conquered it. And then we're also speaking with Benbella Onyino. Benbella is an oncology nurse at the Kenyatta National Hospital Adult Treatment Center. He's been there for 13 years. He really understands the matter of dealing with breast cancer and other cancers. And so we're having this conversation with them this morning to understand the prevalence of breast cancer in the country, to understand the risk factors like he had started explaining, and then also to see what is being done to fight breast cancer in the country. In the room this and every morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko, and CT Muga.
Benbella, I want to ask this question. Given that these oncology services, from what you've told us, has expanded in the country, do you know of the existence of any community outreach with regards to breast cancer?
There are so many organizations right now dealing with breast cancer across the country. There are so many which have come on board, some governmental, that's non-governmental.
Yes.
Yeah, in the community, I can say, I know like Breast Cancer Kenya, which was also founded by a breast cancer survivor, which has been doing great work trying to reach Kenyans across the country who have breast cancer, women that is, and it has been helping them in so many ways. For example, in providing of prosthesis after the mastectomy, also providing drugs. So there are so many organizations.
Margaret, you are a campaigner for breast cancer awareness in the country. What exactly do you do? Being a survivor, what exactly do you do helping other women or families who be affected by breast cancer?
What we do in our group, we do awareness in churches, and at least when we get money, we do a screening event. Like in our strategic plan, we do twice a year, and we have health talks in the hospital, and also we do home visits to our patients. Yes, and also we go back to genes. In our family, I was the first. After 20 years, my sister got lymphatic. Then in that year, 2013, my stepbrother had stomach cancer, although that one passed away, but my sister is still alive. We were three in the family, but one passed. Now we are two are surviving. I and my sister, we are surviving.
Okay.
Was your sisters detected at an early stage due to regular screening?
Yes, and also as I was the first one, I advised my sister not to go for herbal, although there are so many women going to her telling her go for herbal, and she agreed to be treated. She was treated in Kenyatta 7 years ago.
From the work that you do with the Kiambu Cancer Group, and you've talked about you really promote awareness, you even promote regular screening. Would you say that there are times when you have conducted the screening and then you have detected cancer at an early stage and been able to then take somebody for early treatment? And how many cases of such would you talk about?
Well, what we do, when we detect, we see one person with a lump or some symptoms of cancer, we refer them to Kiambu Hospital. where then they are given the first treatment, then they are referred to Kenyatta. Yeah, and now there is what do we call KU?
Yep.
Yeah, that one is very near, although it's a bit costly. They are treating people very well.
Sure. Benbella, the thing about calling out people to come for early screening is kind of like what we saw when the whole fight with HIV and people were told, come out and get tested. It's scary for a lot of people. It's scary to think that you would go for screening and then maybe you would find that you have a lump, if we're talking specifically about breast cancer. But can you tell us why it is important to find out early? Why is it important, and why does that continue to be the message that is spread even today, to come out and get screened early? Why so important?
Thank you so much. So what I can say is cancer, it's a chronic illness. Chronic illness, by the word chronic illness, I mean it's a disease that can take so long to treat. It can take years. So cancer is normally categorized in stages, and most of them we have stage 1 to 4. There are some which go up to stage 5, but most of them is 1 to 4. So the earlier you detect this cancer, which is that stage 1, the better the prognosis, or the better the outcome. Because when I'm starting a patient on treatment, I normally aim at 3 things: to cure, to control, or to palliate. In curing, I'm aiming at more than 90% curing this patient, of which now is that one falls in stage 1. And stage 1A or B there. Now, when it comes to stage 2 there, I'm aiming at controlling it to avoid this cancer from going, or I can use the layman language, I can say, from spreading further.
Okay.
Just to control it, to avoid it to continue multiplying at a very fast rate. Now, you'll find now in stage 3B or stage 4, my main aim is just to palliate. I'm not aiming at curing it. I'm not aiming at controlling it, because this thing has now gone overboard now. So the main aim is now just to palliate. If patient has pain, control the pain. If patient maybe has any other complicating issues from cancer, you manage it as per then. So the main reason why we are emphasizing on early screening is so that a patient may come to my facility at a very early stage, whereby I'm aiming at curing it.
Let's address
Not
the elephant.
controlling it. Yes.
The elephant in the room here, which is cost. And many of the times when you hear people talking about their cancer experience with family members, it starts with the issue of cost. Very expensive, even from the point of, yes, you've screened and you've gone and you're told that these tests, sometimes you just hear people saying, something was taken from me and I was told that it's going to be taken to Germany or South Africa, and I'll get my results a while later. How do we deal with the issue of cost, and why is it so expensive to treat cancer?
That I can't talk much about it, but what I can just say is we find most of the drugs that we find when producing them, it's very expensive.
Yep.
For example, I've talked about the biotherapy treatment, whereby in biotherapy treatment, these are drugs which are made to resemble somebody's own body immunity, but now almost resembling the cancer cell, so that the body detects this cancer and destroys it. So you find the production of this drug is very high. So talking on that angle, I can say the best thing which can be done is maybe the government and other maybe partners to come on board and try cushion our patients on these drugs, high expensive drugs or cost of treatment, by just maybe pumping in more funds, just like the way HIV was done in early 90s, whereby we find even accessing the HIV drugs was very out of reach for many people. But when donors came in, the cost also came down. Same to cancer. I believe if the government and donors come on board, this cost will come down.
I want to ask this question about, you mentioned a cure. Is there really a cure for cancer?
There is a cure for cancer. In most cancers, there is a cure. And the key thing is early detection. If you detect it at a very early stage, you can cure cancer almost 90% to 100%.
Then how do you explain remission?
Pardon?
How then do you explain remission if there is a cure? Because a cure means you've eliminated the disease completely, and then there are cases where indeed it is stated that it has been eliminated, and then it comes back, it returns. How do you explain the return?
It is still very hard to explain it in detail. If the cancer was found, there are some cases where you find somebody came at a very early stage, diagnosed at very early stage, but still it recurs later on in life. But still, we have so many cases of patients who have lived for more than 20 years, like Margaret, as she's talking there, for more than 20, 30 years, who are detected very early, and they're still going strong. They're still coming to our facility just for checkups after a long duration, and they're still doing very well. But the case of remission, I can say, is you find the cancer maybe was in an advanced stage, in maybe stage 2 or 3 there. So you have controlled it, but still it comes back later on. Because at the end of the day, we normally talk about micrometastasis in cancer, whereby in micro, you have some small cells which had spread to other parts. So they again begin to grow in those areas. Well, that's one of the property characteristics of cancer cells that makes it so unique or different from other cells, is the ability to move from one place to another place, then establish themselves and begin to grow. So in the case of remission, you find that some micromet cells which had detached from the original site, gone to another different place, and begin again to develop slowly.
If I hear you correctly, you're saying that it's not really possible to eliminate the cancer cells in one's body even after you've gone through very extensive treatment. Is that what you're saying?
I cannot say completely. It is still a very, can use the word, tough disease to manage. But as per the research is going on right now,
yes,
most cancers, most of them, if you detect them very early, curing it, chances are almost 90%. Most of them.
Is it possible for the immune system within our bodies to also get to a point where it can have an easy coexistence with cancer cells, to the point where the cancer cell doesn't increase, and in not so doing, it doesn't actually harm the individual?
That's a good question, Latif. What I can say is that
actually it's CT Muga.
Oh, sorry, CT Muga. What I can say
it is all right. Latif and I are very similar, so it is yes.
Sorry for that.
Yes.
That's why you're right now on board on treatment for cancer. We have the monotherapy or the biotherapy. The biotherapy is whereby these drugs have been modified to resemble the body immunity. But still, these drugs are made from the cancer cells themselves. Then they are made to resemble the cancer cells, so that the body, when these drugs are infused into a patient, the body detects these cancer cells and destroys. So it's a way of boosting the body immunity to destroy the cancer cells or to attack the cancer cells. One thing that cancer cells normally does, it evades the body immunity system so that the body immunity cannot detect them. That's why it's normally one of the most difficult diseases to manage around. But with the new treatment that we're having on board right now, that's the biotherapy, the body now detects the cancer cells and destroys them. And also, that drug also destroys the cancer cells themselves.
Wanjiru, just looking at where you've come from since 1993 with your diagnosis, and now the progress that has been made over time medically, but then also what you've been able to do with others who had been diagnosed with cancer and those who were healed, such as yourself. What gives you satisfaction? What makes you happy that you have seen has changed over time that makes you happy?
Well, after my mastectomy, after some years, we formed a group that is Kiambu Cancer Support Group. And in the group, we have a lady of 40 years. Now she's 41 years since she was done mastectomy. And she was not done radio or chemotherapy. And she is doing very well. By then, after 1993, I met some other ladies who were only done mastectomy, no radio, no chemo, and still they are surviving, and they are in the group. So what I would say is that if you go early, the treatment is cheaper. Mm-hmm. You can do without chemo or radio. Most of the time, those ladies could not afford chemo by then, and there was no NHIF. Mm-hmm. So they managed to be alive until today.
Margaret, you talked about something which sounds like it's a big concern for you and the group, Kiambu Cancer Support Group. And this is about people who are diagnosed with cancer, and then there are very many people who come and tell them to go look for the herbal treatments.
Yes.
Why is it that people are opting to go for this herbal treatment?
Because the treatment of cancer is very expensive. Mm-hmm. Also, it has side effects. And falling of hair, most of the ladies, if they lose their hair and lose their breast. They can't agree to be removed the breast, to be done mastectomy.
And so, is there somebody that you know who has gone through this herbal and then did not even have to go back to traditional medicine? I mean, to formal medicine.
What they do when they are going for herbal, they don't tell you until they come to you when the disease has spread, and then they want to go to the hospital now. What they do, they don't survive, and most of them die very badly.
Yeah.
Yes, they don't come when they are going through herbal.
You'll only hear about it much later.
Yeah, they come later, and they don't talk of it. Like now, I have a lady I'm following. She has gone somewhere else where we can't talk in the ears, but she has gone for that, and still we are looking whether the treatment will be successful or not, because I've never heard of that treatment. I have consulted so many doctors, and they said they have never heard of that treatment. But still, we have to wait. If it is successful, we'll follow the treatment. If it is not, we'll let her go.
Is there anything that you ever heard the government doing to dissuade people from going for such treatments, or even dealing with the people who are offering these herbal kind of treatments, like the county government or the national government? I'm sure they know and they're aware that this is happening.
They know, but if there is nobody complaining, they continue, and the people continue dying. Like we have lost so many ladies.
So who should the complaint go to, Margaret? So if it's people from the support group across the country should be complaining, asking the government to at least support, do you think it would make a difference in what you're seeing today?
Well, it's very hard to trace the herbalist, because the one who is given herbal is not saying anything. She's keeping quiet. And even when she goes to the hospital, she keeps quiet, and she said, I was still at home, I had no money. And now you see, you have no evidence.
There's a question that's coming in on social media, and maybe this one you can take, Benbella. Yonam says, I lost a neighbor last week to breast cancer. Her youngest child is at least 25 years old. What's the probability of cancer existing in that family or in her generation?
First question I would last be, yes?
Yes, Benbella, go ahead.
In that scenario, I can maybe get to know how old was the mother when she was first diagnosed with breast cancer. But still having in mind that this may be a first degree relative. Now it falls under the first degree relative. First degree is whereby it's either a mother, a daughter, or a sister. That's a first degree. Okay. Since now she's a first degree, I would encourage this lady to be going to be doing breast self-examination, also to be doing clinical breast examination, whereby now the difference between breast self-examination and clinical breast examination is in breast self-examination, we encourage ladies to be doing it for like 3 years. Then in clinical, after the 3 years, now you go to a health practitioner and carries out a breast self-examination. Then with her age, being 25 years old, we'd recommend her maybe to do an ultrasound after that duration to ascertain or to find out if there's any growth in the breast, which her hands might have missed, and also the hands of the health practitioner might have missed. Now the ultrasound will be able to capture it in our imaging. So the probability of her developing, it's still very hard to tell because you have to get more history. When was the first time, maybe her first menarche, that is, when did she begin to get her first menses? Also the mother, when was the first time she was at what age was she when she was diagnosed? Then also you need also to know, are there any family members who have breast cancer, either grandmother, sisters, so that you may be able to categorize them in which risk factor they are in. Is it high risk, low risk? That's when now you can say whether you can categorize.
Do you see the numbers going down? I mean, if we're looking at almost 2, it looks like small numbers, but if we're looking at almost 2 per 100,000 in Kenya presenting with breast cancer, if you do a forecast over the next few years, do you see these the prevalence rates going down, Benbella?
It's a yes and a no, because it takes both sides to participate. That is, you find most of these things will fall now in the government hands and also on the side of the citizens of this country. Now, if the government side, it will be playing a role by sensitizing the citizens on breast cancer, creating breast cancer awareness, and also making the cost of this treatment to be affordable for most Kenyans, so that most Kenyans can reach out to it. On the side of citizens is that they play a role so that they can bring it down is by following our advice on preventions to cancer, exercising, good diet, early screenings. If they do such things, the prevalence rate will come down.
Let's talk about this period of COVID-19. There was a lot of work that was done by the government to try and contain the spread of COVID-19, among which was cessation of movement into and out of Nairobi County and other counties. And at some point also, people stopped going to hospital for a while for fear of contracting COVID-19, and also for just allowing healthcare workers to deal with COVID-19. What impact did that have on cancer and cancer patients?
The impact was bad. I can say, because one, you find the cancer treatment is a continuous treatment. You find maybe the patient is on chemotherapy, they have maybe to be repeating it after every 3 weeks. If a patient is on radiotherapy, it's a daily thing, Monday to Friday, maybe going to up to like 6 weeks. So with the COVID issue around, most patients, they couldn't reach the services here in Nairobi because there was a lockdown. So there was a discontinuation in treatment in most cancer patients because they could maybe come to Nairobi. Patients that started treatment here in Nairobi, maybe in Kenyatta, whichever facility, or KU, or whichever. But you find due to lockdown, they couldn't now come to Nairobi, most of them. Then also there was also the stigma for COVID. There's this notion, there's this word that it's worse, especially when we have another underlying illness like diabetes or cancer. So that thing also made them to be afraid to come to Nairobi, because having in mind that Nairobi right now is like an epicenter for COVID-19. So most patients are avoiding to coming to Nairobi because they are fearing, because it is still a new disease, they are fearing, they didn't know what to expect. Then another thing also is for the health workers also. There was also that stigma. I can use the word stigma between health workers and patients, because you still don't know who has the COVID-19. So you're also trying to protect yourself, because you are working in the cancer department, there are patients coming, you don't know where they have the COVID. So there was still that stigma. But as time goes by, I think you're getting over it.
Okay. It's this month whereby we look at the gains that have been made looking at the efforts that are being made on the parts of patients and also those who provide support, what do you think are some milestones that have been reached? What are those things that you can actually celebrate for a disease that has really eaten away at people's lives, at people's livelihoods over the last couple of decades? What are those things that we can celebrate from both of you, starting with you, Margaret? What can you really say? I mean, you've dealt with it, like we say, for 20 odd years, 27 years. What are some of the things that you look at and say that this is where we have reached and this is what we would use to keep going? And also for you, Benbella.
Well, for me, for those 27 years, I have seen a success for those who agreed to go to the hospital, and also supporting one another, like counseling and doing other things. We work together, we do teach each other how to meet. And the day, our support group day, we are very happy in the group, and we enjoy the day. And also there are people who come to ask questions about how we survived. That's where I'm very happy about it. Because for those who come to us, they do very well, even in their treatment. Because most of them, they pay the NHIF card. They go early. The treatment is cheap. And still they come back to us.
Very good news. Benbella, what is it for you? What would you say would be the success stories?
First of all, I'll start maybe by saying one of my success stories is I've seen several patients who are maybe in high school or primary school. I've seen them going through the treatment, completing the treatment, and seeing them even becoming lawyers, some getting married. You feel so good when somebody sends you a message and telling you, I'm getting married this date. These are a patient who passed through your hands and sends you even the pictures of the wedding.
Sure.
That's some of the success stories that you feel motivated or encouraged. Or somebody sends you a message, I'm graduating, I'm now a lawyer practicing. Still, you feel so great. Then some of the success stories that I can say we have had in this country is there are more health workers now in this field of oncology. When I went to school, I remember we were like 20 oncology nurses trained. Now the number has increased to like 100. That's also a success story. There are like 5 oncology doctors in the whole country. Now the number has also increased. I can also talk about the cost of treatment. When I joined the oncology department, that is in like 2007, the cost of treatment was very high, and NHI, most of this insurance was not covering this cancer treatment. But as per now, most insurances are on board. NHIF is on board, and you find NHIF is a cover for most common wananchi in this country. So NHIF is covering the treatment, thus making it easier for most patients to access treatment. The cost has come down. Not yet that level that you expect it to come to a common wananchi in Kenya, but at least as compared to then, it has come down. Then I can talk about the therapy. They used to travel all the way from all corners of the country to come to Kenyatta National Hospital for radiotherapy, because it was the facility with the cheapest form of radiotherapy in the country, because it was the only place with the radiotherapy machine in the government institution. But right now we have KU, MTRH right now is installing. So you see, at least it's now being decentralized.
Right.
Not all patients, they must come now to Nairobi. Those are also some of the success stories. There are also other facilities coming up which are offering cancer treatment across the country. They also reduce the burden of patients traveling from Mombasa to Nairobi, Busia to Nairobi, Turkana, Nairobi. Those are some of the success stories I can say we have so far achieved. And I can also say we are also having some of the best treatment that the world is offering here in the country. They're also still coming up and more.
Okay. Benbella Onyino, thank you very much for speaking to us. Benbella is a trained oncology nurse at the Kenyatta National Hospital, and we've also been speaking to Margaret Wanjiru. She's a breast cancer survivor, a co-founder of the Kiambu Cancer Support Group. Thank you very much, Benbella and Margaret, for speaking to us, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.